I am pleased to see when retribution catches up with what it deserves. In this story, the main character's wife cheats on him and leaves him for a wealthier man. But less than 7 months later, wife realized what a stupid thing she had done. My dear viewer, let's watch this video and find out how it ended. And while you're listening to this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Let's go! I was rinsing the last bits of grease off the dishes when Mary walked into the kitchen, looking like she was headed for some glamorous event. Her elegant red dress and the sharp click of her heels against the tiles made it seem like she should be on a runway, not standing next to me. I almost expected some comment about dinner or a sarcastic remark about the mess I was cleaning up. But instead, she casually leaned against the counter, glancing at her reflection in the microwave as she touched up her lipstick. Without any preamble, as if she were discussing something mundane like the weather, she said, "Tomorrow after work, I'm leaving, and I won't be back until the next day." My hand froze mid-scrub, and her words hung in the air. I blinked, trying to process her statement, not entirely sure I had heard her correctly. "What do you mean? A business trip?" I asked, even though I knew full well that her job didn't involve overnight travel. She was an assistant in finance. There was no reason for her to go on any late-night trips. "No, I'm just leaving," she replied, closing her lipstick and tossing it into her bag without even glancing at me. It wasn't the words that hurt. It was the cold indifference in her voice, as if she didn't think it was necessary to explain anything. I waited, hoping she'd elaborate, soften her words, or even laugh and say it was a joke. But nothing. She grabbed her car keys and threw them into the gym bag she always carried with her. The silence between us grew heavy, almost suffocating. "Where exactly are you going?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady, though inside a storm was already brewing. I didn't know which one of us would break first, her or me. "Just going to hang out. With friends," she finally answered, meeting my eyes for a brief moment. "I already told you." And with that, the conversation was over. She turned and headed for the door, as if we were discussing something as trivial as grocery shopping. Some men might have let it go, trusting their wives without asking too many questions. But I wasn't one of them, and this wasn't the first time Mary had acted strangely. Lately she'd become distant, hard to reach. Her phone was always in her hand, and she'd lock it whenever I got too close. She texted late into the night, left for the gym at odd hours, and when she came back, she didn't look tired or worn out, but rather energized. As soon as the door clicked shut behind her, a wave of anger washed over me. I wasn't usually the jealous type, at least I hadn't been before, but something was off here, as if she was deliberately testing how much I could take. I grabbed my phone and scrolled through our recent messages. Nothing out of the ordinary. Her replies were short, almost indifferent. But then I noticed a message from last Friday. She had said she was staying late at work and added, "Going to the gym after, don't wait up." But now, looking back, I realized she hadn't come home that night looking like she'd been at the gym, and she hadn't even taken her gym bag with her. Something wasn't adding up. A heavy sense of dread washed over me, that feeling you get when you know something's wrong, even without solid proof. But the proof, I realized, was within arm's reach. A sudden impulse made me walk over to the closet and grab her gym bag, the one she always carried with her. I unzipped it, expecting to find her usual gym clothes. But there were no sneakers, no water bottle. Instead, I found a neatly folded blouse, a pair of high heels, and a pack of mints. Mints? Since when did she take those to the gym? The truth hit me in an instant. She hadn't been going to the gym. She was meeting someone, and whatever she had planned for tomorrow, it clearly wasn't just a regular night out with friends. My heart pounded in my chest, and I had to sit down as the weight of everything settled on me. Every moment I had brushed aside, every strange behavior I had ignored, now came into sharp focus, causing a deep, cutting pain. I was on the verge of exploding with rage. My first impulse was to grab the phone, call her immediately and pour out all the accusations I had been suppressing. I needed to confront her face to face, lay out all my suspicions. But something held me back. Acting on emotion alone wasn't enough. I needed undeniable proof. If I started arguing without solid evidence, she could deny everything, and I'd be left with nothing. That's when a plan began to form in my mind. It came to me like a sudden flash of insight. If Mary was truly betraying me, and I was almost certain she was, I needed to catch her in a way that she couldn't wriggle out of. No more vague suspicions or dodging the truth. I needed clarity, a way to end the doubts about my sanity. Something was going on, and by the next day, I was determined to find out exactly what. Carefully, I put her gym bag back in the closet, making sure everything was in its place. Inside, a storm of anger and frustration raged. That night, sleep was an unattainable hope. My mind kept replaying every lie she'd spun over the past few weeks. How long had this been going on? Was this affair something new, or had it been happening for months, maybe longer? Every night out with friends, every trip to the gym, every extra hour at work, it all now seemed steeped in suspicion. The next morning I woke up before she did. She slept beside me, her face calm and innocent, as if she had nothing to hide. I couldn't stop staring at her, trying to understand how someone could lie so effortlessly, not a trace of guilt or shame on her face. She seemed almost too pure, and that made me shudder. I went through the usual morning routine, made breakfast, pretended everything was normal. We exchanged the usual greetings, a brief good morning, and a routine see you later. She kissed me on the cheek before leaving, just like any other day. But today, something felt different. Her kiss was cold, empty. There was no warmth in it, no sincerity. It felt like nothing more than a habitual ritual, as if she was playing a part she had rehearsed. As soon as the door closed behind her, I sprang into action. I knew her first stop would be work, but where would she go afterward? I had no idea. She mentioned she wouldn't be back home until the next day, which gave me time to figure out what was really going on. I reached out to a friend of mine, a guy who knew his way around tech and didn't care much about legal boundaries. I was willing to go further than I had ever imagined. With his help, I installed a hidden tracking app on her phone. It was simple and discreet, allowing me to track her location in real time. Everything was falling into place. When she came back briefly to grab a few things, I kept calm, pretending everything was fine. I casually asked when she would return, acting like it didn't really matter to me. Without missing a beat, she said she'd be back late the next morning after staying at a friend's place. Every word she spoke felt like a lie. Even her "I love you" as she left sounded fake, as if she was acting in a play, and I was the only one who didn't know the script. The moment the door closed behind her, I opened the tracking app. Her location immediately popped up on the screen, and I watched as the small blue dot moved. But she wasn't heading to the gym or to a restaurant to meet her friends. No, she was heading straight to a hotel. My heart sank. The truth hit me like a punch in the gut. She wasn't even trying to hide it. Her audacity only fueled the fire of my rage. She truly believed I was too blind to notice what was happening right in front of me. Without realizing what was unfolding right before my eyes, I completely missed the clues that were obvious to anyone who was paying attention. People like her, those who think they're always one step ahead, tend to underestimate others. They believe they can manipulate events from behind the scenes, assuming you'll remain oblivious to their plans. But this time, it was different. I grabbed my keys, threw on my jacket, and headed out the door. If she was going to a hotel to meet someone, I needed to see it with my own eyes. It wasn't just about exposing her secret. I wanted to witness the moment she realized her deception was no longer hidden. I drove without any clear plan, my thoughts a mess, as if I were on autopilot. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. The anger didn't matter anymore. It had burned out long ago. Now, there was only a cold, unwavering determination, the kind you feel when you're about to cross a line you know you can't come back from. This wasn't just about ending things cleanly and neatly. I was searching for the truth that leaves nothing behind but destruction. Her GPS marker hadn't changed. She was still near the hotel, a luxurious one, an elite spot in the heart of the city. This wasn't the kind of place you casually drop by with friends after a regular evening out. I parked across the street, feeling a knot of anxiety in my stomach. From where I sat, I had a perfect view of the hotel entrance, where the revolving door slowly spun, letting in elegantly dressed professionals. I checked her location again, still there. The last traces of doubt evaporated, giving way to a cold clarity. Mary wasn't on a business trip, and she certainly wasn't meeting friends. I waited. Seconds stretched into painfully long minutes, each one pulsing in my chest like the beat of a drum. And then, I saw her. Mary stepped out of a taxi, her heels clicking on the pavement as she walked toward the hotel. I admit, she looked stunning. Her hair was perfectly styled, and she wore an elegant, expensive dress I had never seen before. But it wasn't just the dress. Her entire demeanor had changed. There was confidence in her stride, perhaps even a sense of defiance, and then he appeared. A tall man in a designer suit that screamed wealth stepped out of the hotel to meet her. He smiled smugly and placed his hand on her lower back as they entered the building together. At that moment, I froze. A flash of rage swept over me. There it was, the undeniable truth, clear as day. For a few seconds, I couldn't even breathe. My vision narrowed, and I could focus only on the two of them, on how she looked at him. That smile, the one that used to be meant for me, was now directed at someone else. My pulse thundered in my ears, but I forced myself to stay calm. There was no point in storming in. I had to keep control. I watched as they disappeared into the lobby through the revolving door. The urge to follow them was overwhelming, but I held back. Rash actions wouldn't get me what I wanted. I needed to be strategic. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I picked up the phone and called the hotel. It sounds absurd now, but at that moment I was desperate. "Hello, I'm trying to reach my wife. She's staying with you tonight," I said, trying to keep my voice calm and as normal as possible. "Of course, sir. May I have her name?" The polite and businesslike woman at reception replied. I gave her Mary's name, feeling my heart pound as if it were about to burst from my chest. "Please hold on a moment." The receptionist's voice paused briefly before continuing. "Yes, Mrs. Taylor has already checked in. Would you like me to connect you to her room?" Her room. She's really here. Alone. No colleagues, no events, just her in her private space. My hand trembled slightly as I muttered a quick "thank you" and ended the call. There was no more room for doubt. I had to see this with my own eyes. As I stepped out of the car, a surge of resolve rushed through me. Crossing the street, I quickened my pace, heading straight for the hotel entrance, focused solely on what awaited me ahead. The lobby was eerily quiet, with a faint jazz melody playing in the background, but all I could hear was the relentless pounding of my heart. Each step brought me closer to the inevitable truth I wasn't ready to face. When I finally reached the reception desk, I struggled to keep my voice steady. "Hello, I'm here to visit my wife, Mary. She just checked in." I forced a smile, though my voice sounded tense, almost choked. The receptionist, a young man with perfectly styled hair, glanced at me briefly before typing something into the computer. "She arrived just recently. Room 410. Would you like me to call her for you?" I shook my head, trying to maintain my composure. "No, thank you. I want to surprise her." Surprise her. It felt like a bitter understatement. I turned toward the elevator, my legs feeling heavy as if weighed down by the truth I hadn't yet fully grasped. The elevator doors slid open, and I stepped inside, pressing the button for the 4th floor. The ride felt endless, each floor like a countdown to the collapse of my world. When the soft chime finally announced my arrival, the doors opened to a hallway so quiet it was suffocating, as if the air itself was holding its breath, waiting for the inevitable confrontation. Room 410. Just a few more steps. My heart was pounding so hard it drowned out all other sounds. The hallway seemed to stretch endlessly, a cruel distortion of space. I stopped in front of the door, staring at the brass numbers as if they could somehow reveal the truth I didn't want to accept. My hand hovered over the door handle, but I couldn't bring myself to turn it. I stood frozen. I didn't knock. I didn't move. Every fiber of my being screamed at me to leave, to turn around and never find out. But I couldn't. Not anymore. It was too late. I took a deep breath and knocked on the door. Every second dragged out like slow torture. Then I heard quiet footsteps. The lock clicked, and the door opened slightly. There she was. Mary stood in the doorway, and for a moment everything felt unreal, as if I had stepped into some distorted version of my life. Her eyes widened in surprise, but only for a second. I saw panic flash in them before her expression turned cold, her face twisted into something icy and full of contempt. "What are you doing here?" she said, her voice quiet and filled with anger as if she didn't want anyone to hear. I couldn't speak. I couldn't even move. My gaze slid past her, drawn to what was behind her. The room was dimly lit, shadows stretching from the soft glow of the single lamp above the bed. And then I saw him. A man, sitting casually on the edge of the bed. His jacket was draped over a chair, and his tie hung loosely around his neck. He looked at me indifferently, as if I were nothing more than an inconvenience, an unwelcome intrusion into his evening. "Who is this?" His tone was calm, but the raised eyebrow betrayed his expectation for an explanation. Mary stepped between us, gripping the doorframe so tightly her knuckles turned white, blocking my view of the man. "I asked you a question," she repeated, her voice firm but laced with impatience. What was happening? I couldn't understand anything. She wasn't surprised, not even a hint of it. Instead, she seemed irritated, as if I were the one causing trouble, as though my presence had suddenly become the problem. "The real question," I said, struggling to keep my anger in check, "is what are you doing here? And who is this guy, Mary?" She crossed her arms over her chest and gave me a cold look, completely ignoring the man behind her. "It's not what you think," she snapped back with that overused, infuriating phrase. That phrase, empty and aggravating, only fueled the fire. "Not what I think. You're in a hotel room with some random guy and I'm supposed to believe it's innocent?" She rolled her eyes, clearly irritated. "Oh, please, Daniel, this isn't some cheap soap opera." A bitter, sharp laugh escaped me, full of pain. "Calm down," I echoed, confusion in my voice. "You lied to me. You said you were going out with friends, and here you are in a hotel room with this guy." I nodded toward him. He didn't move, staying completely indifferent to what was happening, as if this was just another ordinary evening. "So why don't you explain what's really going on?" She sighed heavily, the kind of sigh people give when they have to explain something obvious. "Fine. You want the truth?" I nodded, though my insides clenched with fear. I wasn't sure I was ready to hear what she was about to say. "I'm seeing someone else." Those words hit me like a punch to the gut. I almost collapsed, but forced myself to stand tall. Of course, I had suspected. The signs had been there for weeks. It was impossible to ignore them. But hearing her admit it so easily, without regret or hesitation, felt like falling into a void. "You're seeing someone?" I repeated, my voice no longer sharp with anger but full of sadness, unbearable sadness. "Yes." She shrugged, as if she had just said something completely mundane. "I didn't plan on telling you like this, but since you decided to play detective, now you know." I was stunned by her calmness. She stood there, completely composed, as if we were discussing something trivial, like the weather. No apologies, no regrets. Just cold, hard facts thrown in my face, as if I had no choice but to accept them. "And him?" I nodded toward the man who still hadn't reacted. He watched us, detached, almost smiling, as if the whole scene amused him slightly. "Who is he?" She glanced at him briefly, her expression softening for a moment, as if silently reassuring him that everything was under control. Then she turned back to me, her face hardening again. "This is David. We've been together for a while now." David. Of course, he looked like a David. Groomed, self-assured, someone who'd never faced real hardship. He seemed completely unbothered by the chaos he was in. "A while?" I repeated, each word coming out with difficulty. "How long? About 5 months?" She said it so casually, as if it were a trivial detail. My head spun as I tried to process what was happening. It was too much. My world was falling apart right in front of me. For 5 months, she had led me astray, all while pretending that I was the one behaving irrationally. I glanced at David, sitting motionless on the bed, his hands resting on his knees, a satisfied smirk playing on his face. He clearly found amusement in the situation, as if he were watching some twisted play starring me. An urge boiled within me to wipe that smug grin off his face, but I wasn't about to give him the satisfaction of seeing me lose control. "What now?" My voice trembled as I spoke. "Is that it? Are we really ending it all here? 30 years of our life together and she was ready to throw it all away. Just like that." Mary's face showed no emotion. If anything, she looked indifferent. "Daniel, don't blow this out of proportion. You know as well as I do that something hasn't been right between us for a long time." Her words struck hard, her audacity to paint this as a mutual collapse, as if I had been a part of these months of lies and betrayal. "And your answer was to cheat? To sleep with someone behind my back?" She let out that irritating sigh that always pushed me to the edge. "It wasn't planned, okay? It just happened." As if those words could fix everything. There wasn't a trace of remorse on her face, no guilt, no regret. She had emotionally checked out of this relationship long before I realized something was wrong. Inside, something fragile broke. Something I had clung to for so long finally snapped. I looked at her, then at David. "Do you love him?" I asked, my voice shaking with the hurt. For the first time, her mask cracked, if only for a moment. "I don't know," she muttered, almost indifferently. "Maybe, but that's the point, isn't it?" Her answer landed like a heavy weight on my chest, dragging me down. It was all over. She had made her decision long before I realized something had gone wrong. Standing in that hotel room, I understood that our connection, or what I thought was a connection, was irrevocably lost. Mary tilted her head slightly, her lips curling into a cruel smile. "So, are we done, Daniel?" she asked, her voice sharp, almost mocking. "Is this it?" The way she said it, as if this was just a minor inconvenience in her life, was the final nail in the coffin. My body shook, not with sadness, but with deep, uncontrollable rage. Every muscle tensed as I fought to contain my anger. I looked at her, the woman I thought I knew, and realized I had been wrong. I had no idea who she really was. This wasn't the Mary I had married. This wasn't the woman I had built my life with. The woman standing before me was a stranger, cold, calculating, soulless. But she wasn't done yet. "What did you think would happen?" she spat, her words dripping with venom. "Did you really think I'd just sit around waiting for you to start paying attention to me? You were so absorbed in your work, so caught up in your own world, that you didn't even notice me anymore." My voice rose sharply, each word laced with disappointment. "I sacrificed everything to build a decent life for us. Everything I did was for us, for you, and this is how you repay me." She merely shrugged, rolling her eyes as if speaking to someone too foolish to understand. "Oh, stop feeling sorry for yourself. It's not about your work, Daniel," she replied in a cold, detached tone. "It's about the fact that you were never truly there. Yes, you were here physically, but it always felt like I didn't exist for you. I'm tired of being invisible." "And your answer to that was running to someone else?" I blurted, my voice shaking with rage, each word hitting harder than the last. "Instead of talking to me, instead of trying to fix things between us, you just went behind my back to him?" I pointed at David, who stood watching our argument as if he were a spectator in a bad drama. Mary didn't even blink. I wasn't hiding, Daniel. I just moved on. You were never going to change. David, he actually sees me. He cares about me. Cares? I laughed bitterly, meeting David's eyes for the first time. Oh, I'm sure he's very concerned about your well-being. David, completely unfazed, leaned back on the bed, hands behind his head, as if none of this involved him. Listen, man, he said with an infuriating calmness. I get that you're angry, but what's happening between Mary and me? It's been going on for a while. It wasn't some impulsive fling. His audacity stunned me. He spoke as if we were equals, as if I should just accept this betrayal and move on. You think you're saving her? I growled, my voice low and full of fury. You think destroying my marriage makes you the good guy? David shrugged, still wearing that smug smile. Maybe it's not about you, man. Maybe you just weren't giving her what she needed. I stepped toward him, my fists clenched, but Mary quickly moved between us, her eyes flashing a warning. Don't you dare, she snapped. You don't have the right to play the victim. I froze, my heart pounding as I stared at her. Victim? I'm not playing a role. I've been faithful to you all these years. I trusted you for 30 years, and you've been secretly seeing him for 5 months. And somehow, I'm the problem? She shook her head, looking at me almost with pity. You really don't get it, do you? It's not just about the affair. It's that you were never enough for me. I needed more, Daniel, and you weren't willing to give it. Her words hit like a knife to the gut, shattering any remaining hope. There was no guilt in her voice, no hesitation. She had already rewritten the story in her head, casting herself as the victim of some imagined neglect. In her eyes, she was justified. She had convinced herself that this was all my fault. I looked at her, truly seeing her for the first time, and the weight of her betrayal crashed down on me. The lies, the months of deceit, it was all so clear now. The woman I had loved, trusted, and spent years with was gone. She had been gone for a long time, and I had been too blind to see it. A heavy silence enveloped us, full of finality. It felt like an unbridgeable chasm had opened between us. My chest tightened, rage and deep, hollow sadness swirling inside me. I felt the tears fighting to break free, but I forced myself to hold them back. Falling apart in front of her wasn't an option. I refused to give her the satisfaction of seeing me break. Finally, I found the strength to speak, though my voice was barely audible. You could have told me, Mary. You could have said something, given me a sign that you were unhappy. We could have fixed this, worked through it together. But instead you chose to destroy everything. My words hung in the air, but she stayed silent, just staring at me. Her gaze was empty, cold. There wasn't a shred of emotion left in her eyes. I swallowed hard, feeling the lump in my throat. So what now? You and David ride off into the sunset? It was all I could manage to say. She met my eyes for a moment, and for the first time there was a flicker of pity in her expression. I owe you nothing, Daniel. I'm moving on. You should do the same. Something inside me broke, something I hadn't even realized was still intact. I gave her one last look, the woman who once meant the world to me, and understood that she wasn't worth fighting for anymore. She had made her choice, and now I had made mine. Without another word, I turned and walked out, clenching my fists so tightly that my nails dug into my skin. The moment I stepped into the hallway, the emotions I had been holding back rushed in. Anger, grief, disbelief. I leaned against the wall, trying to breathe, trying to pull myself together, but it was pointless. Everything was crumbling around me, and in that moment I realized it was truly over. Not just with her. It was over with the lies, with pretending there was anything left to save. I wasn't the one who destroyed us. She did. The elevator ride down felt endless. My mind was a whirlwind, thoughts crashing into each other, making no sense. My hands were trembling, my heart racing, but there was nothing more to say. No accusations, no pleas, no words that could change anything. I had seen all I needed to see. When the elevator doors opened into the lobby, I forced myself to step out, trying to look like my marriage hadn't just disintegrated before my eyes. I needed to escape, away from the gleaming chandeliers, away from the polished marble floors of that cursed hotel, away from the stench of betrayal lingering in the air like cheap perfume. Outside, the evening had settled in, and the city carried on with its usual life. Somewhere there was laughter, car horns, the flicker of neon lights. It was surreal to realize how the world kept moving, indifferent to the fact that my life had just fallen apart. I didn't even make it to my car. My legs gave out and I collapsed onto the nearest bench. The adrenaline that had kept me going drained out of me all at once. I sat there, staring blankly at the street, but I didn't really see it. Numbness began to set in, that emptiness that comes when the truth finally sinks in. Mary was gone, and in her place was a stranger who had ripped out my heart, stomped on it, and handed it to someone else like it meant nothing. The worst part was, I should have seen it coming. The signs had been there all along, the little things I ignored, the instincts I silenced. How could I have been so blind? I replayed every memory over and over, searching for the moment when she stopped loving me. Was it 5 months ago? Years? Or had I always been fooling myself, believing in something that never truly existed? Almost without thinking, I reached for my phone and started scrolling through our old messages. I wasn't entirely sure what I was hoping to find. Maybe some hidden clue buried within the I love yous, or in those mundane conversations we once had. But as I skimmed through the words, I realized they were hollow, like I was reading someone else's memories. It no longer felt like us. My finger hovered over her name. The deep urge to call her remained, simmering beneath the layers of pain and resentment. Part of me longed for answers, for her to admit why she chose him, why she destroyed everything we had worked so hard to build. But what would that change? She didn't care. That became clear when she so easily lied to me, without even showing a hint of guilt. She had already moved on. The brutal truth hit me. There was no chance of getting her back. And honestly, I didn't want her back. Not the version of her that could stand in front of me, without the slightest shame, admitting her betrayal as if it meant nothing. Not the person who twisted our story, making me doubt myself, while she was the one tearing us apart. I stared at my phone, my thoughts tangled, until I made the only decision I could. I blocked her, deleted every message, every photo, every trace of her from my life. I erased her from my phone the way I wished I could erase her from my mind. It wasn't closure, but it was a step in the right direction. Leaning back on the park bench, I let the cool night air wrap around me and took a deep breath. For the first time since this nightmare began, reality settled in. My marriage was over. The future I had imagined with her, the plans we had made, it all vanished, shattered into pieces too small to ever put back together. I sat there, staring into the darkness, trying to make sense of the chaos my life had become. The thought of going home, to the place where we had lived together, felt like an unbearable weight. Every corner of that house would be a constant reminder of her, of the lies, of the nights I stayed awake, convinced she was just out with friends. It would suffocate me. But where could I go? I wasn't ready to call anyone. I couldn't bear to explain what had just torn my life apart. I could already hear their voices telling me I needed to move on, that she wasn't worth it, that I'd be better off without her. But none of their words would soothe the sharp pain of losing the life I thought was mine. I closed my eyes and rested my head in my hands. I felt the tears welling up, but I wasn't going to let myself cry. Not here. Not like some tragic scene from a movie. Yet the weight of her betrayal was crushing. I remembered everything we had been through together. The times when it felt like nothing could break us. Quiet evenings on the couch, laughing at silly movies, dreaming of a future that felt so certain. Now, all of it seemed like a cruel joke. People always say that betrayal feels like a knife to the heart, that it turns your world upside down. But nothing could have prepared me for this. It wasn't just painful, it hollowed me out, leaving an empty shell of who I was. Losing her didn't just mean losing her. It felt like I had lost myself. I sat there motionless while life went on around me. People passed by, completely unaware of the storm raging inside me. And then it hit me. I had a choice. I could sit here drowning in my grief, letting it consume me, or I could stand up, walk away from this chaos and start over. It wouldn't be easy. In fact, it would probably be the hardest thing I had ever done. But staying here, in this darkness, was no longer an option. Mary was gone. The life we shared, the life I believed in, was gone too. But I was still here, and somehow, that had to mean something. I still hadn't moved. My legs trembled as I stood there, a dull ache spreading through my chest. But as soon as I forced myself to take the first step, the cold, harsh truth hit me. I was leaving her behind. Along with her, I was leaving behind the lies, the betrayal, and everything she had tried to manipulate. There was no going back. The next morning felt surreal. Waking up to the emptiness beside me, the silence was louder than any alarm clock. I hadn't slept, but the light filtering through the blinds reminded me that time hadn't stopped. Life was moving on, whether I was ready for it or not. I lay there for what felt like an eternity, staring at the ceiling. Numbness enveloped me as I tried to figure out what would come next. The choice had been made last night, but as the fog began to clear, the harsh truth hit me again. Mary was gone. Our marriage was over. I was free from her web of deceit, but the freedom I thought I wanted now weighed on me like a burden I couldn't shake. Eventually, I forced myself to get out of bed, each movement slow and weighed down by exhaustion. I went downstairs, where the kitchen looked like a battlefield. Mountains of dirty dishes from dinner remained untouched. Unopened letters cluttered the countertops, and the fridge was still slightly ajar after I had absent-mindedly grabbed something to drink in the middle of the night. It seemed as if time had stopped in this room, except for me. I made coffee, not because I wanted it, but because I needed something, anything, to fill the void. Even this simple action now felt strange. My mind was full of thoughts of her. Where was she? Still at the hotel? Did she wake up next to him? Did she regret anything? Or had she already moved on, pretending none of it ever mattered? My hand automatically reached for my phone, in the foolish hope of a message from her. But of course there was nothing. No apologies, no explanations. She had made it clear that I no longer mattered, and now she was moving forward, without looking back. And here I stood, in my kitchen, now my kitchen, trying to piece together what was once us. The anger hit me again like a storm. It wasn't just heartbreak. It was something much deeper, a betrayal that struck at the core of my being. How could she? How could she stand there and pretend that I wasn't good enough? Before I realized what I was doing, I hurled my coffee mug across the room with all my strength, in a fit of rage. It shattered against the wall, coffee splattered across the floor, but even that didn't bring any relief. I wanted to break more, destroy everything in this house that reminded me of her. I wanted to erase every trace of her presence, throw it all out and set it on fire. The wedding photos, the frames with our memories from trips, all the little souvenirs we'd collected over the years, everything. But I didn't. Instead, I stood there, breathing heavily, my hands shaking, staring at the mess I had made. Destroying things wouldn't fix what she had broken. And as I stood amidst this chaos, my phone vibrated. For one insane moment, my heart leaped. Maybe, just maybe, it was her. Maybe she had come to her senses and was ready to explain. But it wasn't her. It was her mother. I stared at Barbara's name on the screen, not knowing if I should answer. Mary's mother had always been kind to me, treated me like family. We were never close, but she cared, asked about me at family gatherings, sent birthday cards when Mary forgot. I didn't know if Barbara knew what had happened, or if Mary had already spun the story to suit herself. After a long pause, I reluctantly picked up the phone. "Hello, Barbara," I rasped, my voice still strained after the last few days. There was a pause on the other end of the line, as if she didn't know where to begin. "Daniel?" she said quietly, and I could sense the concern in her voice. "I don't know all the details, but Mary called me last night. She said that it's over between you two." Hearing that from someone outside the chaos made everything feel even more final. I rubbed my forehead, feeling the weight pressing down on me again. "Yeah," I mumbled. "I guess that's one way to put it." Barbara exhaled slowly, and I could feel the sympathy in her voice, even through the phone. "She didn't tell me much, but Daniel, I know my daughter. If she hurt you, I'm truly sorry." Her words took me by surprise. I expected her to defend Mary, to explain that things weren't as they seemed, to offer a different perspective. But instead, her voice carried a genuine apology, as if she understood the pain Mary was capable of causing. "Thank you," I said, my voice trembling. "That means a lot to me. It's just, things are complicated right now." "I understand," Barbara responded gently. "I won't ask for details. Just promise me you'll take care of yourself, okay? You didn't deserve this." Those last words, "you didn't deserve this," hit me harder than I expected. After everything Mary had done, I had started doubting myself. Was I not good enough? Had I missed something? But hearing that soft, almost hesitant kindness from Barbara made me realize that despite everything Mary said, I didn't deserve the way she had treated me. When we ended the call, I stood there with the phone in my hand, feeling utterly drained. Exhaustion seemed to seep into my very bones. I couldn't keep replaying that awful night over and over in my head, torturing myself with endless cycles of regret and self-blame. If I wanted to move on, to truly start fresh, I needed to let go of Mary, not just physically but mentally and emotionally as well. I had to stop letting her haunt my thoughts. I wandered around the house, opening closets, rummaging through drawers, touching places that still held traces of her life. Her clothes, her books, small trinkets she didn't bother to take when she left with David. I found some boxes and bags and started packing up everything that belonged to her. In some strange way, it felt like I was reclaiming the space she had filled in my life. When I finished, the house felt emptier than before. But it was a different kind of emptiness. It felt peaceful, quiet. For the first time in weeks, it felt like my home again. I didn't know what my next step would be. Maybe soon I would file for divorce, or maybe I'd give myself more time to process everything. But for now, this was enough. I sat on the couch, looking around at the bare walls and empty shelves. It wasn't much, but it felt like the beginning of something new, a small, tentative step towards healing what had been broken. The days that followed blurred into a soft haze of quiet, deliberate decisions. Each choice felt heavier than it should have, but every time I removed something of Mary's or deleted another photo of us, the weight on my shoulders lightened a little. It wasn't about erasing her entirely. The years we spent together, both good and bad, were still part of my life. But I no longer wanted the pain of her betrayal to hold me captive. I remember the day I finally sat down with the divorce papers. I hadn't rushed into it. I had given myself time, carefully considering every step I was about to take. A part of me, buried deep inside, stubbornly clung to a faint hope that perhaps things could still be fixed. Could we sit down and have an honest conversation? Could I ever forgive her? But every time I allowed myself such thoughts, the memory of that night in the hotel room resurfaced. Her face, cold, distant, still haunted me. The way she spun her web of lies, as if our marriage was nothing more than an obstacle she wanted to discard, made it clear to me. Forgiveness was impossible. Even if I somehow managed to forgive her, the trust was forever lost. And so, I signed the divorce papers. The moment felt surprisingly quiet, too simple for something that signified the end of so much. There were no loud fights, no explosive confrontations where I laid out all her betrayals. Just the sound of pen on paper, and it was over. In that brief instant, Mary became part of my past. A painful chapter, no doubt, but one that, despite all the hurt, taught me more than I could have ever imagined. Time passed without a single word from her. Perhaps she expected me to come back, trying to find some form of reconciliation. But she was wrong, just as wrong as she had been in thinking I wouldn't see through her lies. I had no desire whatsoever to play a supporting role in the life she was building with David. That part of my life was over, for good. Then, out of the blue, I received a message from Mary. It was brief, almost casual, as if she hadn't turned my world upside down. "Hey, hope you're doing well. Can we talk?" The audacity of that message made me laugh, a bitter, hollow laugh. Now she wanted to talk? After 5 months of deceit, after everything we had built was reduced to ashes, she thought a conversation could fix it? I didn't reply. I couldn't. What was there to say? I wasn't about to let her pull me back into her chaos. I had spent too long torturing myself, trying to understand why she did what she did. I agonized over what I could have done differently. But that chapter was closed. In the quiet weeks following our separation, I learned more about myself than I had in years. Letting go of Mary wasn't just about ending our marriage. It was about freeing myself from the person I had become in trying to hold it together. Somewhere along the way, I lost pieces of myself, turning into someone I thought Mary wanted me to be. I gave up the things I once loved, let go of my interests and passions that had once defined me. I became merely a reflection of her desires, losing sight of my own. Now that she was gone, I had the chance to rediscover those lost parts of me, to reclaim the person I used to be. It started small. I pulled old books off the shelves, ones I hadn't touched in years. I began taking long walks with no particular destination, just to be alone with my thoughts. It wasn't a sudden transformation, but it felt like progress. One day, I decided to hike an old trail I hadn't been on in years. It was a place I loved, though Mary had never shown any interest in it. As the sun began to set, casting a soft golden light through the trees, I felt a calmness wash over me for the first time in months. The storm that had consumed me was finally starting to subside, and I felt something like peace. Standing at the top of that trail, looking out at the landscape, I realized one thing. It wasn't just about moving on without Mary. It was about letting go of the person I had become, the one who had clung so desperately to something that was already broken. I wasn't that person anymore. I wasn't going to chase after someone who didn't value or respect me. That chapter of my life was over. Mary's message remained unread on my phone. I didn't need her apologies, her excuses. I didn't need her version of closure because I had already found it within myself. I found it in the quiet moments, in the steps I took to rebuild my life without her. As I descended the trail, the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like everything was going to be okay. At that moment, a long-forgotten emotion resurfaced in me: hope. But it wasn't the kind of hope that comes with the thought of rekindling old relationships, nor the fleeting sense of victory in an argument. It was a deeper kind of hope, one that belonged solely to me. It reflected my belief in a life I had been methodically rebuilding, step by step, from the wreckage of what once consumed me. Mary had become a part of my past, and finally I was moving towards a future that truly belonged to me. For the first time in a long while, I realized I was going to be all right. 7 months after the divorce was finalized, Mary appeared at my door. Her face was streaked with tears, and beside her was a suitcase. "Daniel, forgive me, I have nowhere to go," she said. I couldn't help but laugh in her face. "David cheated on me and kicked me out. My parents have thrown me out of their house. Please forgive me," she begged. "I regret wasting more than 30 years of my life on you. It's not that I wasn't worthy of you. It's that you weren't worthy of me. Goodbye." As I slammed the door in her face, I heard her bitter sobbing, but I didn't feel sorry for her. She had chosen this path for herself. My friend, and this is the end of the story. If you liked this story, then put your royal like and subscribe to the channel. May the force be with you.